In this video I'll talk to you about why prosecutors might actually suck. Like, prosecutors are currently the hot take within Stormcast of being able to charge anywhere at any time and obliterate nearly anything. But I found in my recent games that they're not as good as people actually think. So this has to do with how they play within the army, and I will show you using this battle report basically. So I played a game against a lovely Daughters of Cain army, and I think this game particularly really highlighted why I think prosecutors don't really fit into my army. Yeah, let's just have a look at what is happening here. So we are playing on, honestly I forgot which battle plan this is. I think it's Creeping Corruption, but I'm not sure. So basically we have a layout where there's like 3 objectives on my side. You could argue 3 on the opponent because we have a lot of terrain splitting up the board. You could also split up the board in the middle. In that case these lower 3 would be mine and the top 3 would be my opponent's. I am still waiting for my Storm Vault, Storm Portal to arrive. So for now I have a bunch of logs that are completely within theme of my army. Maybe I'll do something with that in the future as well, but we'll see where we get. So this is going to be my Storm Reach portal for the game. What else do I have? So I have Eridan the Witness. This is my Eridan the Witness. I have a proxy for Gotrek. This video is starting out great, isn't it? I have a Knight Relictor in the back, a Knight Arcanum in the back, and I have some Stormstrike Paladors. Otherwise on the list I have Lord Terminos. I have a reinforced unit of Reclusions. I have a full unit of Prosecutors, and that's about it. Maybe I think I still have a Lord Vigilant on Gryphstalker to round out the points to 2000 points. My opponent has the K-Knight Shadow Stalkers, unit of 9. Doomfire Warlocks, not reinforced. Sisters of Slaughter reinforced. Witch Elves reinforced. Sisters of Slaughter reinforced. Witch Elves. So a nice little mix of stuff. Then a Cauldron of Blood with a... I thought it was a Slaughter Queen because the Hack Queen is all the way in the right here. Then he has Crit, who's had a Groans here. And another unit of Doomfire Warlocks. I think this is quite a solid list for Daughters of Cain. Maybe I would swap out the Doomfire Warlocks and these Shadow Stalkers for more Witch Elves, but then again you already have like 80 wounds of Witch Elf killiness. So, Prosecutors specifically speaking, well, I have high drops. My opponent also had 5. No, my opponent that's less drops. I think he does force me to go first. That makes sense. With my list I have 5 drops. Going first is bad for Prosecutors, I think. Like I could have already put him on the field. My opponent is going to be able to zone out first turn to deny me the capabilities of the Prosecutors, in the sense that he can zone everything away and then the Prosecutors can only go into the Witch Elves or the Sisters of Slaughter. If I really want to do a one-on-one trade, then that could be fine, because the Prosecutors can probably do some damage. Later we'll have a look at the numbers. It's going to be more at the end of the video, just to keep the video interesting at the start as well, and then people who are really interested in the maths, they can skip ahead and look at some calculations there. So I could bring down, I could already have the Prosecutors on the board and then buff them up and then send them through the portal, because what people are mostly playing the Prosecutors as is to just have them close to the Storm Reach portal, something like here, then buff them up with the +1 rend from Eridan, buff them up with the +1 attacks from Blessed Weapons, give them Finest Hours, send them through the portal to a 9-inch charge somewhere, and then charge them in, give them all out attack, and then deal a lot of damage. That does work. However, you will end up with a unit of Prosecutors in the enemy's line, and there is a chance that they will even kill them on the charge. Like Finest Hour gives you +1 save. If you all out attack, you're back to a 3 up. So basically, like, charging into a battle line, I wouldn't use all that attack. Then again, it gives you more damage, so you might want to. So, why did I not use the Prosecutors in this first turn? Basically, I just don't need it to win the game right now. Or well, win the game. It's the first turn, so it's a bit fast to win the game. So what I need to do, I believe on this map it was hold more than your opponent. So I'm quite tempted to just string out the Storm Strikes over here, maybe grab this objective, and basically present my opponent with a viable trade. I have Lord Terminals and the Reclusions. So this is basically what we do. Gotrek moves up, the Storm Strikes move up to capture the objective, and I present my opponent with a block of Reclusions with Terminals, clogging up this choke point, so that if my opponent wants to bring Witch Elves through this way, he either has to go around or go into the Quicksilver Draft combination with me striking first, practically obliterating one of his units before he gets to strike, which I think is quite a good deal. You can also see that the Prosecutors are coming in. This guy should have been on the board. But these wings, man, these wings. So one aspect that makes me not favor Prosecutors as much is that if they're not on the charge and they don't have any buffs, their damage is pathetic. And I believe for the Stormreach portal to be able to teleport units, you have to be out of combat. So your opponent can just attack this unit. Then you have to use Translocate on them to get them somewhere else. Then you have to use them probably in some way that turn, because otherwise it's wasted potential. So you're going in quite unbuffed. Well, in this scenario, my opponent is quite unlikely to attack me. Even then, if you look at everything, these guys, they can, with Kretusa, move 6 in the hero phase. Then they can get a run and charge with spell. I don't. The Myrtle? No, I don't know. So run and charge, so 6 plus 6. Then you're already here. So you moved 18 inches so far. You get a +1 on the run roll. So if you're really lucky, then you can push that. Make it a roll instead. You can have +1 on the charge, so you're more or less there. Basically, if you really are lucky, you can get a unit of Witch Elves, at least in contact with Erdan. Then you can push in towards Prosecutors. So this is a long distance. However, Daughters is quite crazy at the moment. And then again, I just present my opponent with a block of Terminals and Reclusions and call it a day there. This means the first turn I use to set up the Prosecutors. Another aspect of why I don't think you can rely on them first turn is because Blast Weapons is on a 6. 6 is only 1 in 6. Unless you use a Lord Relictor, then it's on a 5-up because of the +1 to chant. Still, it does not improve your chances very much. Also, Erdan's Prayer on a 3+, so if you combine that with the 6 and you want to go in fully buffed, then you're relying on a lot of luck to just get it first turn. There's nothing, however, preventing you from doing the deployment differently with just the Prosecutors already on the board, having the Prosecutors maybe tag out to take an objective. Then they are over there. With 12 inches they can go back, but they cannot go through the portal anymore. You could run them, then they can't charge. So then your threat really comes from this area. So you could use them to attack this objective, but then again your opponent can get there, in this scenario at least, with the Witch Elves. So I thought it better to do it like this, and then it's my opponent's turn. I don't know, I think I took like 5 or 6 pictures, so I don't know what the next one is. A lot of stuff has happened, however, I think, yeah, this is after my next movement, yeah. So what happened? My opponent did go into the Terminals and the Reclusions, and you can see that there's just 1 Witch Elf unit and 1 Sisters of Slaughter unit left. Terminals and Reclusions do amazing trades, like incredibly good at trading. I must say Erdan did help here. So what happened? Terminals was here, the reclusions were here. My opponent, I can go back one picture. My opponent pushed the Sisters of Slaughter around this way, the Witch Elves around this way, basically having a charge of a 3 for each. He went in with both, then I activated my Quick Self Draft. I killed one of the units, I think more or less to the wound. I think it was the Witch Elves, and then the Sisters, they actually killed all of the Reclusions. So that was a bit more damage output than I had expected, to be honest. But they did very well in the first battle round without too many buffs. So yeah, they did really well. And otherwise my opponent basically just spread out. Then on my turn, I had my terminals in combat with the Sisters. Then Eridan went in. Like, there's a couple of things you could do here. I think this is at the end of my turn, yeah. So I could have gone in with the Prosecutors at this point on the Sisters of Slaughter. My goal, however, was to completely remove the unit. And then either Eridan goes in and powers through back, or the Prosecutors go in and power through back. However, I feel like Eridan is more liable to be able to take a charge than the Prosecutors. Obviously, fully buffed up Witch Elves can just kill Eridan as well. So I could also have gone in with the Prosecutors at this point. However, Eridan does not need any buffs to perform. The Prosecutors do need buffs to perform, I find. So if I send in the Prosecutors unbuffed, then every damage that I take is gonna harm them the next turn as well. So Eridan, if Eridan takes 6 wounds back, no biggie. Let's just rally a bit, take some wounds back maybe. But the Prosecutors, I really don't want to rally them even. So what happened here? So the Sisters of Slaughter were in combat with the terminals. Eridan went in. Eridan was striking before them, killed, I think, about, what is it, 12, 14 of them. Terminals killed another 6, something like that, and then Eridan was actually able to power through back to the objective here. So we still have Prosecutors on the board. They're still waiting for the buff turn, and my Knight Relictor is banking points. Eridan is banking points. So either this turn I could have gone in somewhere, but it meant that my opponent had a unit of Sisters of Slaughter that could activate probably before my Prosecutors, with any of his units that I would tag. And then I would only activate them afterwards, because I really wanted to just deal with this. And I have another tool to deal with this at this point. So one aspect is there also that the Prosecutors have to activate first to utilize their full potential. So basically this was not a turn to go, unless I would say, okay, I don't care about these Sisters of Slaughter in the middle of the field, that I have alternative solutions for. So I do want to get my Prosecutors 9 inches away from my enemy, which is more or less here as an option, or in the middle. Well, there was a blob here, so I can't really go here. Could have gone here probably still, or all the way on the right to charge a Manifestation. Manifestation is not really the best target, I think, for a unit of Prosecutors. Also, Knight Shadow Stalkers, not really interesting. I have some birds here apparently. I don't know if they come out on the recording, but so yeah, Prosecutors could go into this stuff, but then again, the activation order would mess me up. So I do go back with Eridan inside a bubble where I can buff the Prosecutors, limiting the mobility of Eridan, because I could also have gone to the other side after this if I had no Prosecutors in this list, basically. So for the rest, I have Gotrek. I was trying out a little bit of an alternative play here, so I wanted to protect Gotrek from the initial strike of the Witch Elves and the Sisters of Slaughter, by screening them with the Griffs. Then again, the Griffs are 190 points, Gotrek is 340. I am sacrificing this unit just to move up Gotrek a bit. Don't know if it was worth it or not. I have the Lord Vigilant in the back to prevent my opponent from teleporting, and that is basically it. So yeah, we are in this state. Turn goes to the opponent, and we'll see what happens. So I do still have my Prosecutors, so that's something. So my opponent basically did as expected. He went in with the Sisters of Slaughter and the Witch Elves on the cavalry, and then the cavalry utterly died to the Witch Elves. I activate counter charge on Godrek to get into the Sisters of Slaughter. It's in a position where my opponent could only strike at him with like 10 models or so. So I do have the guarantee, more or less, that I will survive, and I take 2 damage. I obliterate the Sisters of Slaughter with 2 combat activations, and afterwards I hope it's my turn. So the cavalry died. Otherwise, well, Iridan is safe in the back. Lord Terminals died, but he could amazingly close up the little corridor here again. And we are ready for the next turn, basically. So next turn, I believe my opponent took a double to be able to kill Godrek. So he is at a point where if he doesn't go for Godrek right now, Godrek will just go into the Witch Elves and just murder them. And then my opponent only has buff pieces left. So this would be the point to use the Prosecutors. However, my opponent got the turn, so I don't really need them anymore. And then, if you look at what is still left on the table, still have my Prosecutors hiding in reserve. It's going to be the 3rd turn that they are there. Knight Arcanum, Knight Relictor, still have Iridan. And I have Godrek and the Vigilant. My opponent still has his combat buff block. And a lot of support pieces, honestly. So he takes a double, he kills Godrek, and then on my turn I finally do it. So the Prosecutors go in. So the Prosecutors deploy here. I deploy 9 inches away from the Cauldron, from the Warlocks and the Warlocks, such that my opponent can only redeploy one of them. It is incredibly difficult to make Prosecutors hit the target that you want with the Javelins as well as with their combat attacks. So your opponent can redeploy like 1 inch away even, and it is kind of impossible for you to have the Javelins in for the entire squad on 1 inch on a unit that you want to charge. So you will distribute your fire anyways. So the Javelins I would generally not count in the damage output of the Prosecutors. I did get +1 attack on the 5 aboard save and the Finest Hour. I did not get Iridan's Prayer on it. So maybe I did not bank points for that and it was on a 3-up and I failed. Could be. But I did stack quite some buffs there. Was it really needed at this point? I don't think so. Because what am I going to do? Basically, I just want to kill Gratuza. I have another alternative way of doing this, because Iridan can go in. On a 3-up, I can put her within 1 inch of the Doomfire Warlocks, all the way on the other side, tag Gratuza, and just kill her in that way. I have to make my 3-up though. Then again, is it really worth it to have this unit of Prosecutors hang out all game? To just go in at the end and then kill Gratuza? Probably, possibly. I don't think so, but well, there's alternatives you can put in your list. So the Prosecutors go in, they're able to pile in on Gratuza and just murder the shit out of her, basically. I think I didn't, but like we were talking it out at this point. So I would just go for Gratuza, charge the Cauldron basically, pile in on this thing, and just go 3 inches more or less that way to be able in combat with Gratuza and just try to kill her. In this situation they can comfortably kill a model like Gratuza, that's fine, but we will talk about the damage output in a second. So generally I feel like I don't really need the Prosecutors with this list, and I would rather benefit from something else, like a reinforced unit of Concussors. So I would toss out the Lord Vigilant and the Prosecutors for a reinforced unit of concussors, or maybe the second priest. Could also go if I go that way, just because I have a lot of damage output already and I don't need a second translocate, I feel like. Then again, it's basically a toss-up between the Lord Vigilant or a Knight Relictor at this point. Or Lord Aquilor could also be an option. Just for a teleport dummy, basically. This is going to be the last picture of this report. So let's go and have a look at some prosecutor stats. I think I am a little bit in the way, maybe. AOS StatHammer is a very useful website where you can just put in profiles of units and then it calculates the average damage. I might be here on the right side in the screen, so maybe this is a bit more useful. So what do we have? So everyone is raving on about the ideal situations of prosecutors with blessed weapons, all out attack, finest hour, +1 rend. And then, yes, if you include the shooting against a without save, you go to 41 wounds, more or less. 41 wounds is a lot of wounds. This is your magical combo that you can trigger one day, but it does rely on a lot of numbers. Like it does rely on, if you have banked points, it does rely on rolling a 2-up for blessed weapons, rolling a 2-up for Iradan, having them both within 12 inches of your prosecutors, and making the charge in the end. So if you calculate it out, you have the 2-up on blessed weapons times the 2-up on Iradan times the charge of 93%. It's 64% of the times you will hit everything and you will be able to make your charge on a 9. So you would always want to tag 2 units on a 9 in this case, and then basically your opponent can choose which direction you're more guaranteed to go. You roll your dice for the charge, you see what you get, and possibly you can reroll if you want. You can also reroll for a higher number, but I think I would take any number I get to be able to make a charge somewhere. So 2/3 of the time you get all your buffs off, and that's with banked points. If you haven't banked points, then basically forget it, because blessed weapons, if you don't bank points and you go for that, then probably you want to take Lord Relictor, so that's on a 5-up, then Iradan, that's on a 3-up, and then your charge. That's gonna happen 20% of the time. That is not reliable enough to give them finest hour, basically. The advantage is, first you can try your prayers, then after you can hand out finest hour. So you can look at the situation and then decide if this is your go-turn for the prosecutors or not. Then again, you base your tactics also on the prosecutors if you include them in the list. So you do make decisions like, okay, I will power through Iradan back because it has to be in range to be able to buff the prosecutors next time. Stuff like that. Well, then, the numbers obviously dwindle down as you go down in wounds. So imagine your opponent has a centerpiece with a 4-up save. He goes to a 3-up save with all out defense because you don't negate any of that. Then you will go to 26 wounds. 26 wounds sounds like a lot, but if your opponent, if your opponent has a 5-up ward save, 26 times 2/3 is 17 wounds. That is a toss-up between life and death for this model. I mean, it makes sense that you don't have a unit that can just unconditionally go in anywhere and just kill the centerpiece model of your opponent. Fair enough. Having 300 points in the backside of your army just to have a go turn one time, I don't think it's worth it. Mostly because the turn after, they are screwed. So I have also put in a lot of other scenarios, so let's first still talk about what happens if you miss one of your buffs. So, for example, you don't get the +1 rent, or maybe we'll also afterwards see what the not taking +1 to hit does. So if you miss 1 rent, basically you move up a column. You still get the shooting. This was without shots. So I don't take the shots because my opponent is not a bunny, and he does redeploy with the important stuff, or I am not able to put everyone in range. So what's happening then against the 4-up save, just as a benchmark basically. So you will do 22 damage against the 4-up save if your opponent all-outs defense. It's the orange number here. So you will do 16 damage. If your opponent has a ward save, there's no way of killing a big model. Also against big units, like even a unit of witch elves, you will, after the ward save, do like 11 damage. 11 damage on a unit of witch elves is not enough damage to make sure that they don't kill your prosecutors afterwards. Well then, okay, you say, well, they still are there, right? So let's go to next turn. Or, well, we were first going to see what happens if you actually remove the all-out defense, or all-out attack instead of the... it's this one. No, I have to modify this one. So we take actually away all-out attack instead of the rent. Hop, hop. Wow. Basically, it's more or less the same. So against the 4-up save, you're now at 22 damage. Basically because you shift up a column. 22, and then oh no, I have to take away the rent now. Hopla, I didn't take away the rent. So against the 4-up save, you're at 17 damage now, and then yours to 22. Yeah. So basically, it's a toss-up between the +1 attack or +1 to hit, or the extra rent. It's once you start scaling buffs, it's it doesn't really matter which one you take away. So you no rent, yeah. But yeah, what is really the problem is that if you don't charge, they absolutely hit like rubbish. I'm trying to see if I did this right. Yeah, so if you charge in with prosecutors without buffs, that's a good thing to also consider. So, for example, in this turn, or whatever, if I had my prosecutors on the other side, out of range of Eridan, or Eridan moved away, and the blessed weapons priest also moved away, and I actually wanted to go in somewhere else, like with the Lord Vigilant somewhere with Finest Hour, or Erdan with Finest Hour. So I don't have Finest Hour necessarily available to the prosecutors. What will happen to their damage output then? So in that case, if you don't have any buffs against, well, basically against no save, you just do 23 damage on charge. If your opponent has, like again, a 4-up save, it's 15 damage. So that is 2/3 of what you would do if you miss one buff, and it's about half of what you do if you have all your buffs, and the shots as well. So your damage quickly drops if you do not buff them out to the full potential. And then this dark green one, that is very low. That is if you do not charge and you do not buff them. So this is basically when your opponent tags them. Or in the second round of combat, in any combat, because I mean, even if you buff them up and you go to double this, so you go from 7 to like 14 damage, it's still just low. It's low. But if your opponent is able to tag them, they really don't do any damage, and it completely shuts off your play. So yeah, I don't like prosecutors, but I guess that is already clear. So it does work really well, I find, against players who don't play screens and play out their combat blocks very wide. Because even in this scenario, like start of the game, my opponent gives me first turn, or even if we are in second turn, I do get my prayer points. I do get my full buff potential on. I cannot go in and distribute my attacks over. Well, you can distribute it over 2 units. Sure, fine. So they are all on a 6 up save, I think. So normally, generally, you would do 40 wounds, which is quite a lot of wounds. These guys, or these girls, they have a 6 up ward though, so 40 goes to 33 wounds. So if you split evenly, both units will just survive. If you don't split evenly, you will kill 1 unit at the risk of well, funky dice rolls. Your opponent can still countercharge with anything that you do not tag. So if he has a small gap here, well, obviously you can also just focus here and pile in later. But opponents can still countercharge as well, and that's a big thing. Also, if you just like the threat range of Witch Elves is enormous, but I have my counter in the Reclusions basically with Strike First, because Witch Elves does not play around that. Prosecutors also do not play around Strike First, Strike Last, except for their Ruination rule on a 4-up. So if your opponent tries to give you Strike Last on a 4-up, you ignore it and you're happy as can be. But are you going to go charge into a Demon Prince that can get Strike First? Or are you going to go charge into Ushuran, who can give you Strike Last? Or there's a lot of stuff in the game that actually makes you Strike Last. Or the opponent Strike First. Bellicor gives Strike First to 2 Chaos units. There's a lot of work around. Also covering fire, so sure, you can ignore it on a 4-up. However, you have to account for the fact that if you lose 2 Prosecutors, which is only 4 hit points that you lose 2/3 of your damage output. So you go from 40 wounds being done to, what is it, 26? Which is definitely different against a 6-up save. So yeah, I am not generally a fan of Prosecutors. I know that they are quite a fun unit to play, like a hit or miss missile. You just throw them out, you see what happens, and then on the second turn, you're either very happy with them or you are very disappointed with them. Ideal scenario, obviously, that you just go into one of these units, you leave one guy standing, you power through back 12 inches to safety, and then you're happy for the next turn. So what I could have done here, I could have sent them kinda in, so I could have deployed them next to the Reclusions, charge into the Witch Elves with Finest Hour, because I didn't really use anything, but then I would have had to have them on the board at the start. Could have done that. So you charge in on the Witch Elves. You do your Finest Hour damage, so let's go to that. So Prosecutors, it's going to be no +1 attack, it's going to be +1 to hit, +1 to wound, no +1 rend. But you will take your shooting, probably, because your opponent can redeploy. Doesn't really matter which unit you tag with your shooting, basically. So to hit, it's on a 3 +2 wound is on a 2, and the rend is 1. 1 attack each. So you would put them here then, charge in. Still, if your opponent just redeploys with the Witch Elves, you lose your shooting, just because how the Witch Elves are standing there. So your opponent will very likely redeploy, so I don't have my Javelins. So this is the green one. They have a 6-up save. They could all defend to a 5-up save. They probably will. So they take 18 wounds on average. I mean, it can be higher. Sure, it can be higher. 18 wounds. They will have a 5-up ward save from the Hag Queen. So that's 12 wounds basically, because it's 2/3 of 18 is 12 wounds. So then you have 8 Witch Elves striking back, and the Sisters of Slaughter could countercharge maybe. So 8 Witch Elves striking back. I mean, it's the off turn, so that doesn't really matter too much. Let's just remove all this stuff that we don't need now. So no shots there either. Which is... So we have 8 Witch Elves. 3 attacks each, 3 plus 2 hit, 4 plus 2 wound, rend 0, yeah, damage 1. And that is going to be explain auto wound. Auto wound, it'll be a bit higher. So naturally they don't do a lot of damage back because you're on Finest Tower. They would do a wound, maybe 2 wounds back. However, if you take 2 wounds, you lose a Prosecutor. Whereas on any other unit, 2 wounds is just something you shrug. Prosecutors, you need to rally it back for your go turn, basically. Then you have your Prosecutors there, you power through back, assuming that Sisters do not countercharge. So then you're here. Then you have to teleport them back afterwards, or you have to put reclusions even further up, but they can only go 9 inches away. You can only go 12 inches away. So you will be able to get tagged in combat after. So that it doesn't work. It doesn't work, or at least what I want to do with them doesn't work. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm very curious to what your opinion on Prosecutors is, and if this video changed anything in the entire Prosecutor consideration for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.